The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio's book. The world has always changed in patterns. Empires rise, reach their peaks, and eventually decline, leaving space for new powers to emerge. This has been true for thousands of years, and it remains true today. The story of the changing world order is not just about nations or politics. It is about the fundamental forces that shape human history. Ray Dalio, in his deep study of the past 500 years, found that these great shifts follow a clear and predictable rhythm. Though the faces of leaders change and technologies evolve, the underlying forces remain the same. The empires of the past, from the Dutch to the British and now the American, all rose and fell through similar cycles of creation, prosperity, and decline. At the heart of every great rise is a time of rebuilding. After chaos or war, a new order emerges. A country that has been through pain and struggle often finds a new sense of unity and purpose. The people work hard, value education, and are driven to create a better future. Productivity grows, and innovation thrives. As this new nation strengthens itself, its economy expands, and its influence begins to spread beyond its borders. Over time, it develops financial systems, builds trade networks, and earns the trust of the world. Its currency becomes strong, its institutions respected, and its culture admired. This is the beginning of a new world order. In the 17th century, the Netherlands rose in this way. The Dutch created a financial revolution that would lay the foundation for modern capitalism. They built the world's first central bank and established the first stock exchange. Their ships connected the world through trade, and Amsterdam became the center of global finance. But as the Dutch grew wealthier, they also grew comfortable, and other nations began to challenge their dominance. Over time, the Dutch Empire declined, giving way to a new global leader, the British. Britain rose with the power of industry. Fueled by the Industrial Revolution, the British Empire expanded its reach across the world. Its factories, ships, and colonies made it the global leader in trade and production. The British pound became the world's reserve currency, used everywhere for commerce and savings. London became the heart of international finance. For more than a century, the world operated under a British-led order. But eventually, like those before them, the British faced growing debt, wars, and internal divisions. Their economy slowed, and their dominance faded. 2 world wars drained their strength, and the center of global power shifted once again, this time to the United States. After World War II, America emerged as the strongest nation in history. Its economy was unmatched, its military powerful, and its currency trusted around the world. The United States built a new world order based on its ideals of democracy, capitalism, and freedom. The dollar became the world's reserve currency, backed by gold and by America's vast productive power. The world's financial institutions, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and later, the United Nations, were all shaped by American leadership. This period became known as the American Century, and for nearly 80 years, it defined the modern global system. But no empire stays on top forever. The same forces that lift nations eventually turn against them. Success leads to excess. Wealth brings debt, and power breeds division. Over time, the qualities that created prosperity, hard work, innovation, and unity, begin to fade. People grow comfortable. Productivity slows. The gap between the rich and the poor widens. Governments borrow more to maintain the same standard of living. Debts accumulate, and inflation rises. Trust begins to erode, both at home and abroad. These are the warning signs that an empire is passing its peak. Ray Dalio discovered that these shifts are not random. They follow measurable patterns, and they can be seen long before an empire collapses. When debt grows faster than income, when productivity stagnates, when inequality reaches extremes, and when political divisions deepen, the conditions for decline are in place. These internal weaknesses make a nation vulnerable to external challenges. New rising powers that are hungrier, more productive, and more united. In the early stages of an empire's life, money and credit are tools for growth. The government and the people borrow responsibly to build infrastructure, fund innovation, and expand trade. But as wealth increases, debt becomes easier and more tempting. Eventually, both the public and private sectors borrow more than they can repay. The financial markets boom, creating a sense of false security. When debt reaches unsustainable levels, the system becomes fragile. A crisis eventually occurs, a market crash, a currency collapse, or a wave of inflation. This financial instability weakens the empire's position in the world. Confidence in its currency declines, and other nations begin to look for alternatives. This pattern can be seen clearly in history. The Dutch lost control of their currency and trade dominance when debt overwhelmed their system. The British pound, once the foundation of global trade, fell after decades of war and borrowing. And now, the US dollar faces similar pressures as the American government accumulates record levels of debt and spends far more than it earns. Each time, the same dynamic unfolds. The reserve currency, once seen as the safest in the world, begins to lose its value and its influence. While debt is one of the main forces of decline, productivity is the force that drives rise. In the beginning of every successful empire, people focus on creating real value. They work hard, save money, and invest in industries that make their country stronger. Education and innovation flourish. These habits build wealth that is sustainable. But when societies become rich, the drive to produce often gives way to the desire to consume. People work less, spend more, and expect the government to provide more benefits.
Productivity slows, and the foundations of prosperity weaken.
Over time, the system relies more on money creation and debt than on actual output. This is the point at which an empire begins to decline. Every empire also faces internal and external conflicts. Internally, inequality and political division tear societies apart. When a small portion of the population controls most of the wealth, while the rest struggle to get by, resentment grows. Political groups become polarized, and people lose faith in institutions. Civil unrest increases. Governments, trying to satisfy both sides, often resort to printing more money or taking on more debt, which only worsens the long-term problem. This internal weakness makes the empire less able to respond to external challenges. Externally, the challenge often comes from a rising power. In today's world, that power is China. Just as the United States once replaced Britain, China is now rising economically, technologically, and militarily. It has become the world's manufacturing hub, a leader in infrastructure, and a growing center of innovation. China's rapid growth mirrors the early stages of previous empires: high productivity, strong unity, and long-term planning. Its global projects, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, expand its influence across continents, connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe through trade and investment. Meanwhile, the United States faces rising debt, social division, and declining trust in its political system. The same signs of late-stage decline seen in past empires. Dalio emphasizes that these transitions between world powers are rarely peaceful. When an established empire feels threatened by a rising one, competition intensifies. It often begins as an economic rivalry over trade, technology, and influence, but can escalate into military confrontation. History shows that such power transitions almost always lead to conflict. The shift from Dutch to British power was accompanied by wars at sea. The transition from British to American dominance involved 2 world wars. And today, the competition between the United States and China may define the next great transition in the global order. As empires weaken, their institutions also decay. The rule of law erodes, corruption increases, and public trust disappears. The society becomes more focused on short-term gains than long-term stability. Political leaders turn to populism, appealing to anger rather than reason. This accelerates the decline. Eventually, a major crisis, financial, social, or military, resets the system. Out of the collapse, a new order emerges, often led by a nation that still values discipline, productivity, and unity.
The old power fades, and the cycle begins again.
The lesson from Dalio's study is that the forces driving these cycles are timeless. They are not about ideology or personality. They are about human nature. Prosperity leads to complacency, complacency to debt, debt to conflict, and conflict to collapse. But collapse is not the end. It is the beginning of renewal. The changing world order is the process through which the world adapts, evolves, and finds a new balance of power. Understanding this cycle allows us to see the future not as chaos, but as part of a natural and predictable pattern.